For too long, we've lived in a world of canceled and delayed. No more. Those plans you've been making, they're on. Thanks to OnGo, the #1 ranked at-home rapid COVID-19 test. So that vacation where you get to swim with the pigs, it's on. Your friend's wedding that was pushed back 4 times, it's on. The roar of the stadium, it's on too. OnGo, COVID-19 test results in minutes. OnGo is available at letsongo.com/radio and Amazon. This product has been authorized by the FDA during the public health emergency only, and only for the detection of proteins from SARS-CoV-2, not other viruses. The claim #1 ranked is supported by ECRI's usability evaluation conducted in December 2021.
Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Heather, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Today's topic, child support.
Good one.
It is a good one. They're all good. Yes. This is an obvious question, but what is child support?
So child support is really created out of the laws. And it is a formula that has been created that determines how much really each parent is to contribute to the support of the child. And then it, depending on their, lots of various factors, that you come up with a number. So it can be manipulated some. There are many factors that can go into it, but overall, this is what the law says. Hey, this is your legal requirement in a divorce or a paternity action that you have to pay for your child.
I was thinking that the number is just determined based on the person that has to pay that does not have the physical custody of the child, but it's determined by both. Using both?
Yeah, there are a lot of things we can get into that, but right, there are so many things that go into that formula that impact the ultimate number.
Okay, and I don't know why I thought it was one-sided, which doesn't make sense, but there you go. That's some knowledge.
Well, the people paying it feel like it's one-sided, but it's not one-sided. It really takes in many factors.
Many factors, yeah. What cost does it cover?
Well, depending on your children, meaning like their ages and things like that, I think you'll be lucky if it covers the grocery bill, if you ask my opinion. It is essentially what you need for your child. So if it's the light bill, if it goes towards the mortgage, yeah, that's all required. Nobody is going to say, this is what you use it for. This is just the other parent's contribution to the child's care. And usually it really is such a low number, in my opinion, based on everything, that for most people, it doesn't cover a whole lot. When the other parents like, well, I pay child support, tell your mom to buy you the tennis shoes. Well, we also got to buy food and clothes and housing and so many things. And I don't think that, and this is my opinion, and as we know, if you aren't aware, I don't make the laws, which I know a lot of people will be very happy about, but my clients would like that, I'm sure. But I don't think it's kept up with just the cost of raising children, and even in inflation and food. I mean, my goodness, you've been to the grocery store lately, and these kids, if they have activities, just gas, like just everything, it is a huge expense. Children are expensive.
You answered my question before I even asked it. I was going to ask you, can you get more due to inflation?
No, that is not what determines it. It is strictly a formula. There's a lot of different, softwares out there that we use to determine it in Florida. You can make a case you have to make that to the judge to increase that number, but there's not an automatic. And I really don't know the last time they evaluated those rules in that formula. It really ends up being a rather low number.
Do you believe that this formula should be updated for things like that?
I absolutely do. And what I'll tell you is, and we'll get into that, but we might just get into it now. What happened, this has been many years, I can't even remember how many years ago when this first started, that it's the overnights that really dictate the percentage of support. So even if two parents make the same money, how much time, when we talked about time sharing, one parent has over the other, that alters it. And once you hit 40% of the time, that number drastically goes down. And so therefore, if you're taking a cynical approach, like I have been known to do, I would say they want the time to pay less money. And so men who really do want the time and are like, no, I will still pay the full amount, they do that, and they show up and do that. And that is a smaller percentage. And I understand, and like the theory under the law is, okay, if you've got them 40% of the time or 50% of the time, as the other parent, you should be, you still have to house them, feed them, and you should clothe them and take care of the expenses when they are with you during that time. That doesn't always happen in reality. From a perspective of, oh no, get your mom to pay for those clothes, or I'm not buying you clothes, I pay child support when you're here, have them bring the stuff. Some people can just be so petty, and that, unfortunately, they've lost sight of what's right for their child.
So the child support, it could cover things like their education, anything medical, extracurricular activities. Can that be put into the divorce agreement for child support on top of anything else?
Usually, no, that is separate, and that can be problematic, but it is what it is. And so then the formula comes out and it says, okay, I'll use this as an example. Dad, based on the incomes, is responsible for 70% of what this formula says it takes for this child support. So then we look at that percentage. Now, uncovered medical, okay, because one of the parents is going to have medical insurance on the children, ideally. And that gets factored into the child support calculation. That's part of the numbers that go into the formula. But then, of course, we have copays. We have prescriptions. Sometimes there are things for children that aren't covered by insurance, like braces. So that then is on a percentage based on what we call the share of support. So if it was a 70-30, that means that one parent has to pay 70% of that out of pocket. The other has to pay 30%. And this can, you got 2 or 3 kids and they're going through a lot of expenses. It's an accounting, thing. You got to really stay on it and either get the reimbursement or the initial pay for that. And with extracurricular, usually, and that is if it's not agreed upon the standard, generally the court's going to say, hey, the 50-50, they have to pay out of pocket on agreed upon, extracurricular. That can be a whole issue too, because you look at these kids' sports, and I'll just give you dance for one example. Come recital time, they want to take all these classes. It's wonderful. And then recital time, it's a big chunk of change. And if one parent doesn't want to pay, they'll say, well, I didn't agree to that, which is, again, losing sight of what your child does. And some children have been, involved in sports and activities, expensive ones, forever. And then the parent all of a sudden is like, no, I'm not going to pay for your travel soccer, your travel lacrosse, and this club stuff. It's really ugly because there's that agreement part. But yes, they are supposed to continue to share in those expensive. And that is above and beyond child support. That is not what child support covers.
So child support really is the normal everyday needs. Food, clothing, shelter. Everything else would be extra.
It really is. It is. And even, when I say, depending on the numbers, like I was explaining, we've been to the grocery store and it's like, wow. And especially if you're cooking and wanting to eat healthy, as we all know, it costs more to, buy fresh food and all of that. But regardless, that's a big, and then I was saying the age, when these kids go through a growth spurt, Grace. Now my son is not quite the teenager, but boy, I used to have my daughters as teenagers. Their friends would come over. I was shocked by how much they could eat. All these skinny little girls, and man, they can put away some food. So because they're growing, their metabolism is, what I wish mine was still at.
And I think about this, and I'm just sitting here laughing at you. I'm not going to even go there. But I'm, I'm thinking about this, and everything that you said, I'm thinking, but how is that supporting the child? Because think about the words. It's child support, and it's everything. At least in my mind, it's everything. But really, it's really not.
It's really not. And it, and that's just the reality. Like I said, the things. And things add up so much. And I can speak on this, not from from the perspective of course, knowing what the numbers end up for our clients, but just raising children ourselves. And think about it, they have a birthday party. Okay, well, you got to give the kid a gift or a gift card and $20 here, $20 there. It adds up. And we're not even talking about clothes. And once they get into that, what kids are wearing. And, it is a lot. And you want to believe parents are doing the best they can. I think when we talk about the money is when, so many, and I'll just say men, because I represent women, they just get bitter and they think that the mom is using this. And it's like, if you really look at, even put money in their lunch account. And my son, I think he buys lunch for everybody because I just am like, how do you spend all this money? And we make your lunch every day. I don't know. He's like Mr. Big, he needs a Gatorade. I don't know. But there's just a lot. Like, the yearbook. They need a lab fee. They need, even stuff that's just purely academic, even at just a public school. So I'm not even, talking private. There's things, field trips. Well, I haven't been doing field trips, I guess, that much anymore. But when they do, or class party and teachers things, there's so much. And it's a shame when I see that there's this bickering over that, or there's not the reimbursement. And it is a lot. And, there's a period of time, I think, when the kids are little and there's daycare, and that's very expensive in childcare before they go to school. And then they go to school, but then and aftercare and stuff may not be as expensive, but then there's so many other things that come into play, their activities, their, logistics of getting them places. And then they start growing faster. And the cell phone? No, that's not. Is that included in child support? They're gaming, they're whatever. There's so many things. Our kids today have a gazillion things. And I'm sure we did too, relative to what our parents thought, but it's a lot.
It really is. I'm just thinking about this. And by the way, your son sounds so sweet. It's a reflection of his parents, I'm sure. His generosity. Yeah. I always think so.
Yeah. He's something else, but it's funny. I was like, how did you eat 3 pizzas at lunch? They all want a pizza. I'm like, all right.
I'm a growing boy. That's what he should have said.
Well, that is for sure. Well, he is. There's no doubt.
I know you mentioned as far as percentages are concerned, you said something about 70%, 40%, 50%. Let's kind of break this down just a little bit more. What if you haven't worked during the marriage? How does that affect child support? Or if the woman is the breadwinner? I like that. Will she have to pay child support? How does all of this affect child support?
So where we start in the evaluation is income. Okay, let's start with the stay-at-home mom. Now, the law, it has evolved, but that's probably going to be a case where alimony is going to be in play, for however long. So that is going to go in because, and I'm just going to use round numbers. So for ease of math. So husband, let's just say he's at $20,000 a month income, just gross. Okay, then wife's going to get some alimony. I'm going to use, big numbers. I like big numbers. So hers is 5. Okay, so now his income is 15. All right, and hers is 5. That's going to play into it. Now, because now that's her income for calculation of alimony. And I know you look shocked, but it is. But the good news is she doesn't have to pay taxes on it now. That used to be, many women would end up in a hardship, not understanding they're getting this money and setting aside money for taxes. But so now we have her income $5,000, his income is $15,000 a month. Then we're gonna go down the line from that possibly income is imputed to her. The law does state that. So what is she capable of doing? Sometimes we hire experts to do an evaluation. Is it minimum wage? Does she have a college degree and she had a career but took time off? That goes into play. And sometimes it's, later on, but that would go in on her income, even if she's not making it. Now, similarly, let's say the husband is like, or she's the breadwinner. He can work. Well, they're going to impute money to him that he has to make. And then we go from there. And then you see the difference with the overnights. Childcare goes in there as well by who's paying it. And then we look at, okay, well, you change alimony, but it's better off economically for the wife to get more alimony because that right now is not a formula. That has been proposed at legislation. We'll talk about all that later. But the alimony, and this is round numbers, but for every $1,000, like you add to the alimony, it only changes child support by like $100. So the percentages, and then it really kind of maxes out. I mean, and I'm telling you, somebody who makes, $200,000 a month, they might have to pay $5,000 in child support. Like, it's just, there's such a disparity in that formula. There should be like this high earning formula and then another formula. There should be probably a lot of reform to that child support, but that's not there now. So you've made a lot of expressions, Julie. I know you're in shock.
I have no words. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, we left off and we're going to start talking about modification. We talked about that a little bit in the first segment of the show. Modification and penalties for not paying. Penalties. I really want to talk about the penalties.
What should we talk about?
But let's first of all start off with modification. How and why would the amount of child support be modified? Why, what factors are involved in that?
As the statute reads, it is always modifiable. And I'm going to talk about the economic part first, and then some other things that will affect it. But it is modifiable if the change would be at least $50 or 15%, whatever is greater. An example would be, hey, I know he got a new job, but how do you know? That's the hard part. You're divorced, you're not together. You're not really sure, if he's making more money or not, but you think he is by evidence, of things, or the kids are like, Dad got a new job, so that is where, we look at it and you make a change. Now, as soon as you file for a modification child support, you are going to get a response that says, oh, I want more time with the children and whatever. That is so, and it's so basic, the attorneys, men are so predictable, but that's what they do then, is change on that. So that's the first way that we look to modify, is purely on that financial aspect.
Okay. I know you saw my face when you said $50 or 15%, whichever is greater. $50 is not much. It's not a lot of money.
No, it's not, but it can, make a real difference for most people. But then you think of the hassle of going to court and trying to do that just for that increase. You want it, you're hoping it's going to be substantial to make it worthwhile. Now, if alimony ends or alimony is increased, that's going to affect child support if they're two related. Now, typically, the way that it is to be done is if we came to an agreement, or even a court, ordered it through a trial, that alimony was ordered for 5 years. Okay, well, the children are still going to be under 18 after that. There will be a prospective calculation, say right now in 2022, even though this isn't going to happen till 2027. So at that point, we may have to go and reflect that, but it will say, okay, at that point, child support goes up when alimony goes away. And we do a calculation with the intent to prevent the need to have to go to court. It may still be required. And then also you have 3 kids. As each child turns 18, and graduates from high school. So if they turn 18 and they don't graduate till June, at that June, it is required that then when this divorce is finalized or paternity action, we say, hey, at that date, let's just say that's come up this year, June 2022, child support is going to change. And that's difficult because, not many people that I know, and they may say, oh, okay, you're 18, you graduated from high school, hit the road. You're still feeding them, clothing them, taking care of them. So, but that's the law. You don't have a legal responsibility to financially support them once they turn 18.
You know what? I was about to ask you that. So 18 is the magic number.
In Florida. Now, in D.C., Washington, D.C., licensed in Washington, D.C., it's 21, which truly is a much more realistic number based on, what kids do. And even if they go to college, wherever they go, they still generally need some financial support. So, and I'm not sure what the age in New York is, a higher age as well. The last time I looked, it was either 2021, I think. So,
have there been petitions to change the law in Florida?
Not in this fashion. So, there are a lot of lobbyists for men to pay less and to get rid of alimony. There are very few lobbyists to help children and women financially, in my opinion.
Now let's talk about the penalties for not paying. What happens if that happens?
So I've seen a lot in these 22 years of, practicing law. And the main thing is you have to have the ability to pay. So I'm going to give an extreme example. If you're in jail, father's in jail, he can't earn money or shouldn't earn money. I don't know, obviously, so that would not be, and he's already in jail. Okay. So that's not going to, can't really do much about that. Now, just because you're unemployed doesn't mean you don't still have an obligation, but the court can't put you in jail if they find you didn't have the ability. Now, they may say this arrearage, meaning you still owe the past due money, but I'm not putting you in jail. However, also very often you will see the people go to jail. And the bond out, they call it a purge amount, is the amount that they owe. And then they will miraculously come up with the money. Now, and I've seen some harsh judges, and this probably, I haven't been in, child enforcement court in a long time because there's a lot that goes on that's, unrepresented. I have heard judges, say, well, what about that watch? What about the jewelry? It looks like your purse. It looks like you ought to be able to, your shoes, you ought to be able to come up with the money. That is probably not very politically correct, but that used to happen. And they would just say it. And they're like, you're going, don't come in here looking like $1 million and tell me you can't support your child. So that you can go to jail. And that does happen. That certainly does happen. But it usually doesn't happen the first time.
I wrote this down. So you mentioned if he's in jail, okay, or whoever is supposed to pay child support is in jail. What if you find out he's actually earning money while he's in jail?
And that, then yes, he would be required to support. Now, because he could have a job, could be on a lot of different things. Now, once the state gets involved, and that's called the Department of Revenue, they can and will garnish wages. It takes a long time. Every state, like I said, is different. There are some states that are much more aggressive in enforcing child support than, say, Florida. But but they do. It just takes a long time, but that can certainly happen. And now they will, if there is an arrearage established and you have it registered through the state of Florida, which is always in my opinion, the right thing to do, because then if they haven't paid and they have a tax return refund, the state will nab it and send it to the mom to make up for the past due.
Can I refuse visitation if child support is not being paid?
No, those two are mutually exclusive. You need to financially support your child, and you need to always make sure that visitation is open. You got to go to court. You're going to get nabbed for withholding the child, for not paying. So can't do it. Got to take the high road. And that's why, you got to let your child see. He may be financially a deadbeat, but still loves his kid, whatever, wants to see him. You got to let that happen. Now, what really does happen, and this is remember we talked about in the first segment that percentage of time, and that's that 40% and that 50%. And you're going to be shocked by this, but I am going to tell you that sometimes in a divorce, the husband fights to have all this time with the kid and then doesn't exercise it. So then guess who's stuck with the child? 80-90% of the time is mom, but I'm getting support based on a different schedule. So you can go back and get retroactive for the father who is not exercising the time. So that's not you refusing, that is them failing to exercise the time.
Okay, would that be an absentee father, basically? Or no? Is that some, okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just somebody who, and the moms usually know that. They're like, he is not going to see these kids. Can we make the court make him see him every other weekend or maybe one weekend a month? Give me a break. No. And that's unfortunate. All we can do is make him pay.
This really goes back to another show that we did, and we talked about the mental health of the children, because that has to really weigh on them in some way.
Absolutely. And I know that I've said this before, when we talk about disparaging, kids are going to know if he's a loser, he's a loser. And they're going to figure that out, because the way you treat them, the way you treat their mom, they're just smaller human beings that pick up on all that. They understand. They know if their dad's riding around, nice car, has new house, family, and yet they're struggling at home for mom to try to buy them, what they want. They do. And that's unfortunate. And it is true why the mental health, helping your kids have the skills to cope with that. Because at the end of the day, it's still their dad. It could still be the mom who is not being a great mom and not putting the kids first, and, lots of things that we know. And children are going to learn to cope with it. Those are going to be skills. If they can learn that, will be good, because then they don't carry around that hate, resentment their whole life. Truthfully, I feel like, give them the tools they need to accept their parents for who they are. We all want parents to do a better job for kids, and they're just human beings who some just can't. And it's very frustrating always for one spouse versus the other, but it's how different are they from the person that you married? And, they probably are who they are, and they haven't turned into anything, greatly different unless they've really worked at it.
Let's talk about child support and special needs children. We talked about what child support doesn't really cover in the first segment of the show. But when we're talking about a special needs child, there's so many other things that really need to be taken into consideration. So what happens in this case?
So that would be more specific when you're originally going through something, with as far as what the child needs, therapy, maybe some special tutoring, whatever is, and those costs are already, what those are. We would incorporate those in some way. Yes, you can account for that in child support to some extent, or, within a separate order that this amount gets paid by this person or whatnot. Because that really just, again, we've already talked about how expensive the kids are, but then when you have some special needs and you have special medical therapy issues that need to be taken into account, the law does provide for that. You just have to, make that case and prove that and determine who's going to be financially responsible.
So this basically tells me that 18 is probably not the magic number in this case.
Correct. But your child, this, you're getting divorced, the child's 12. You're going to have to go back to court prior to 18 because it's so much more in the future. And have that determination to have the support continued, because there are certain things that are going to come into play once they are an adult. there may be some disability available, but if they've never worked, I mean, those things are different, but can come into account. They may be eligible for some type of funding that might make sense for the family. So it's important to know that, yes, there is support generally beyond the age of 18 and a special needs child, but you're going to need to go to court and get that ordered. It's not going to just continue on without a specific order requiring that.
And I was thinking that this is something, since you know that you have a special needs child, that it would automatically just continue because it's a known thing.
Again, if depending on the parties, they can agree to that, but some people won't. They'll say, no, let's see what happens or whatever. And, and I will tell you, in those kinds of cases, when the marriage is breaking up, those can be very stressful relationships because of those increased stressors of a child. And so sometimes it's just a lot more animosity, anger, resentment, you name it. So that's why the law provides for that. But generally, it's something where you acknowledge it in the original agreement that we may have to go back. It may also be a reason where, say, in absent the special needs of the child, the wife, could have a job, could do that. However, the care really prevents her from doing that. So that increases her need for alimony. So, which we'll talk about later. But, because everything really is interrelated, even though we talk about things, try to stay on the topic of child support, but so many things come into play with it.
You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. So tell me this, do grandparents or other family members, do they have rights when it comes to children?
They do not in the state of Florida. There is that, and that's been quite a few years ago, where it was determined that parents, have a constitutional right to rear their children, and that grandparents don't have any rights per se to see the child, to seek visitation with the child. In most cases, there are some things carved out in the law where they can seek visitation, but those are exceptions.
So my question is, let's say that one of the parents was incarcerated and they didn't go to court to say, okay, this is the person that's going to have custody of the child while the parent is incarcerated. But let's say it's the mother. The mother gets out and the mother goes off with the child, raising the child, but doesn't let the grandmother or grandparent see the child. In that case, would that be an exception, especially since they were already there raising them at some point?
No, is the short answer. And I can even give you a more shocking answer that, or scenario that, and it's sad. It is, I understand, like it's just is. Okay, you have a family and let's say they're divorced. Mom dies. Father gets the child, and the mom's parents loved the child dearly, had quite the relationship before she died. They, nope. The father can say, nope, you have no rights to see my child. And the court, they will not order it. They will not require him to see their mother's parents.
But that is their blood running through that child's veins. I mean,
I know. And we can most likely agree it's not good for them. That child has family. They've lost their mother. You ought to encourage that. But I'm just telling you that you can't do it legally. It's just not going to happen. And it's very, that it's heartbreaking for the grandparents. And it is, I would suggest, equally heartbreaking for that child who had a relationship, but they don't have rights in that case. The only time a grandparent could seek visitation is if a child basically has been what you would call adjudicated. We've talked about adjudicated dependent, meaning they're in dependency court, say DCF. Then a grandparent can seek to have visitation, many times in those cases, maybe they are, or the person who is, watching the child at the time. But as far as the other situations in family law, it's not a possibility.
So let's talk about managing expectations. Do women sometimes have unrealistic expectations about custody and the amount of support that they'll get?
Absolutely. I think everybody does. I mean, hey, I'm number one. I am completely unrealistic. So I absolutely, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't see why we can't do that. So yes, I do, because the reality of the law in these formulas and the way it all plays out, you're like, you have got to be kidding me. So yes, I do. I think that is natural. If you have not been through it before, you're going to be shocked probably on many things. And I mean, I expect the clients to be, and that is our job, as hard as it is, to tell them what, they maybe not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And this is how the law plays out. And it doesn't mean that your life is over, but you need to understand how the law looks at things. And people, many times I've heard that's not fair. And it's like, well, this is the justice system. It's not necessarily fair. It's what the law is. And it's not always black and white. There are some things I'm like, this is black. Like, there's a lot of area, because it's fact-based and law, and you have to weave that together. That's what the lawyer does for you. But yes, I would absolutely say that most people coming into it, whether they're men or women, are a bit shocked as to what, this is how this is going to play out.
How do you prepare someone for that? Because it seems like you may have the conversation. Now, listen, this is probably not going to be what you're expecting. And then you tell them the number, and they realize there was so much truth in what you said before. And I mean, maybe there is no preparation for that because you just don't know.
I think it is just reinforcing again and again, hey, this is the law. These are areas where I think, we have room to make arguments and, maybe get more. That's why mediation can be a wonderful thing, because the idea is, let's make a list of the things that we are getting in mediation that really it won't happen in court, because court's pretty, a judge is going to make some decisions one way or another, not as much flexibility. And then, that both sides are negotiating in a way that, hey, I'm achieving something that I'm probably not going to get in court from a judge, but as my spouse, we can negotiate certain things, maybe certain money, things, the way they work. But, as we just reinforce it again and again with, our clients and the women, and at the end of the day, if you're in a relationship that is not healthy and is not serving you or your children, I think money's important. I mean, we got to pay the bills. We got to get from where we got to get, but you need to look at your quality of life, the peacefulness of your situation. And if you have a little more peace, that's going to give you more energy and more time to figure out how to change your life. And so, I mean, that's the way I look at it. If there's an amount of money that you're like, hey, unless I get this amount, I'm not leaving, I can't answer that for you. I mean, that's kind of like prostitution, I guess. I don't know, and we all make decisions that are difficult. And sometimes the decision is, it's not worth it. Well, that's your choice. I mean, everybody, that's what we got, free will, but we're a no fault state. So don't be surprised if you wake up one day and you get served. So,
Something you said, and you've talked about this before, but we haven't really talked about exactly what it is and really the benefits of it. Mediation. What exactly is that?
So mediation is where there are certified mediators in the state of Florida. Anybody now wanting to be a mediator, they have to be a lawyer. There are some mediators out there now who aren't lawyers, but that was before the law changed, which was probably at least 15 years ago. So, but generally speaking, they have experience in family law. So they understand the law, they understand the issues, and they work in the ideal situation. Each party has their own attorney, and then the mediator works between the two to facilitate an agreement. And it works more often than it doesn't. And the reason that, a mediator is a neutral. Now, they should, ideally, in any negotiation, they're going to, try to play devil's advocate and, help you see other sides, because as your advocate, as your attorney, I'm on your side and I'm advocating for you. And what's also really important that some folks mistakenly think, well, we can just go to mediation. And not just go to mediation. Everybody has to go. But if you don't have a lawyer, you don't even know what your rights are. So how do you know if you're making a good deal? Because that mediator, they absolutely can't advise you. They cannot say, hey, you won't get this in court, or you could do much better. Like they can't. They have ethics. They can say, this is what he's offering. You can go, and they might scare you about going to court, or that's the way you perceive that. But court is where decisions get made. And, too often I've heard from women who are like, well, I was just so nervous about going to court. It's like, there's nothing to be nervous about. Like, if you have an attorney, they know the rules, they know how to get you where you are. And then they can say, okay, this deal, like, this is your worst day in court that you're signing for because now you're afraid you can't go, or this is a great deal, sign it, before they change their mind. But if you don't know, then how can you make a good decision if you don't know what the law would do and what those options are? And so that when we're in that situation and we mediate and you've got the attorney, but the mediator, we settle probably 80% of our cases.
So mediation is a requirement.
Yes, in the state of Florida, in a divorce, it is required.
Okay. Are there some people that get to the table and say, you know what? I don't want to do this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time. But the mediators do require like a 2-hour minimum. Now, some of the private mediators require a 4-hour minimum so that you don't just show up and go, y'all can go pound sand, I'm out. And that can happen. But and those are usually folks who maybe aren't represented because it's, you're paying your attorney. Most attorneys are like, I have been in cases in a mediation where we were there for a few hours and they're like, nope, we're not settling. Okay. And usually that happens with people who are being really greedy, and in instances where then I've gone to trial, we have prevailed because, they had an opportunity to settle in compromise, which is nobody loves compromise. Everybody wants everything they want, we all do. And when you have that ability to compromise, and like I said, like an agreement on things that are really important to people, Julie, it's usually the children, certain holidays, things that are very specific but really important to them, or, the court's just going to be pretty generic on meaning we have guidelines, this is what I'm going to do. So that's where mediation, there are some things in mediation that you can really negotiate and feel good about it. And, because it's also cost benefit analysis. It's going to cost more to try this case. And sometimes you just got to, because the other person's like, no, I'm not agreeing to anything. So that is, and that kind of attitude usually doesn't fare well for those people in front of a court, because they're not seeing the whole picture. As far as, they have nothing to lose. And that's a day, you can't negotiate with people who are like, I have nothing to lose, I'll go to court. You might, so.
Oh my. Any parting words on this topic, Heather?
We talked about so much, Julie. All I know is, my best advice is talk to a lawyer. You just understand where you stand and how the various laws and everything works. Because, when we're talking about children and money and assets, you ought to do it right. Because when you don't, that's something you do regret, and you got to live with the fact that you didn't really understand what was happening.
And it seems like it's going to cost you more if you don't do it right.
Oh, yes. I generally tell people that. You can go do it on your own. It'll cost you twice as much and twice as long. When you come back and recognize that, yes, I was right. This was not something you should do on your own. And it's just because, and the worst part though, Julie, because I don't mind trying to fix the mess and dig somebody out of a hole. Like, we're really good at that here, and great lawyers and things. But the worst for me is if you've gotten yourself in a mess in a court order that I will tell you legally, like, we can't change it. And I hate to see that for people who were just naive, scared, making a decision, and then they're like, I want to change this. And it's like, well, you signed this last week, and this is probably not going to happen. Legally, this is not something that you're going to have a right to change. And nobody wants, there's no lawyer who wants to tell a client that, that, I'm sorry, you went into this on your own, and this is not, and now you aren't happy with it. This is something I can't fix for you. So that's why it's so important to understand, like we've talked about throughout from the very beginning, you are entering into the laws of the state of Florida, and those laws are going to govern. So you ought to know what's going on, because the law, and these judges, they have a lot of power to make decisions about your life. And it's very important to know where you stand and what you have to risk, or lose, what's at risk for you.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
Hi, I'm Flo from Progressive. Being a baseball fanatic like me can be stressful. It's not all sports points and touchdowns. So Progressive is going to help you take your mind off your team for a moment. Instead of thinking about how they missed that goal point score, think about the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, letting you choose coverage options based on your budget, unlike your team that missed the end zone net area. Well, anyway, hope this distraction about Progressive's Name Your Price tool was helpful. It sure kept me from thinking about all those penalty balls. Yay, sports!
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.